Philip Stoughton. Welcome to this episode of Made in Mexico. Today I'm joined by Hugo Yamada from the Season Group and Ivan Romo. Everybody knows Ivan from SMarTSol. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Before we get into the questions, let's do a quick set of introductions. Hugo, tell me a little bit about yourself and about Season Group's positioning there in Mexico.
Yes, myself. I've been with the group almost 3 years now, and my main background is in supply chain. As it relates to Season Group, we are a contract manufacturer. We have a global footprint, and we take pride of being vertically integrated. And the capabilities that we have here in Mexico are SMT, wire harnesses, mostly.
Okay, fantastic. Ivan, just in case there's anybody out there that doesn't know you, just a quick intro to you and SMarTSol.
Yes, Ivan Romo, General Manager from SMarTSol. I'm 25 years in the electronic assembly industry. SMarTSol has operations in the most important cities of the electronic assembly industry in Mexico, including Tijuana, Reynosa, Monterrey, Juárez, Chihuahua, Querétaro, and Guadalajara, and also now with operations in Central America, mainly in Costa Rica, and in Texas and in Arizona to cover state's territory. We do business for the most important companies in the capital equipment and consumables, and BTU, Nordson Test and Inspections, Kaizen, AIM-Solder, and others importance, including Techman Robots.
Okay, fascinating to see that you're moving into Costa Rica, Ivan. That industry is growing quite fast.
Yes, some of the big guys in semiconductor industry are moving back a lot of the operations from Asia to Costa Rica. So that is helping to grow in a parallel type of companies for sensors and traditional electronics. So we see a big increase, like 20% of the total installed capacity in Costa Rica is being growing this year. And also there are new companies that are being relocated operations from Vietnam into Costa Rica. So good news for Central America.
Yeah, it's growing fast, isn't it? So you mentioned there's semiconductor moving into Costa Rica and elsewhere, and that's one of the topics I wanted to start with, Hugo. And I'm, sorry to start with something that is causing you pain, but the current component shortage is causing a lot of disruption in terms of getting production out the door. How difficult is that in Mexico right now for you?
I guess we're going through the same difficulties as all other manufacturers out there. The reality is that the component manufacturers are really global players, so it really impacts everybody. We are seeing lead time extensions, volatile pricing, unstable supply overall. That's on the electronic side. On the mechanical side, we are also seeing a lot of our suppliers having labor shortages actually to fill their factories.
Yeah.
Out of this situation, we actually had to take a couple of actions. We actually had to work with our IT team, and we developed a tool that basically is looking worldwide material availability every hour to assure that we have visibility of what is out there. We have extended or expanded really our spot buy supply base, again, to have those channels open at any time that are needed, and even more critical is ongoing and timely communication with our customers.
Yeah.
They are aware of what is happening, and they have visibility of the risks.
Ivan, when you talk to your customers, is that a pain that everybody's feeling at the moment? Is it something that you're able to support? And you mentioned that you're in, capital equipment, software, but generally materials aren't an area that you're in. But what are you seeing?
Well, this situation with the components is not something that is happening this month. That has been a trend from the beginning of the year. So that delayed some of the projects that it was on the schedule to be in Q1. That pushed out the projects to Q3, most of them, and a little bit for Q4, because the companies who really ordered those components at the beginning of the year right now are being able to get those ones. Mainly the automotive industry is the one that is still affected, but at the same time, it was the right moment to do the conversion from the traditional automotive part into the electrical vehicles. So we see a lot of new projects coming for the electrical vehicles in Mexico. So that is a good trend. And that also helps because there is a lot of new facilities set up. The big guys from Asia, the big Taiwanese OEMs, all of them are having new plants in Mexico. So that means that they have been with that supply chain into the ERP systems in Asia and just moving the materials to the Mexico plant. If you go right now to a car dealer and you want to get a specific car, you need to wait 8 to 12 weeks to get the car. So that is how the consumer market is being affected. In the manufacturing, of course, there are some big problems, but right now most of the companies have a plan B to solve that situation. And of course, there is an increased demand for other type of products that are being able to relocate. But when we talked the last time, we talked that in Mexico last year it was around 80 SMT lines. The expected number for 2021 it was to sell 90 new SMT lines. But the real number looks like it's going to be between 110 and 120. So we see one of the largest growth of the electronics industry in Mexico in the last 25 years.
Yeah. So things are moving fast. On the component shortage, Hugo, you talked about what you're doing in terms of global purchasing and how you're able to leverage that global footprint of the company to do that. What about the design side? Season Group have quite a substantial design capacity within the business. Do you utilize that when there's a component shortage? Are you able to maybe redesign something or make some changes so you can perhaps use a different component?
Yes, as you well pointed out, our group has a design team, and actually pretty experienced in the majority of the processes, because we are vertically integrated. And as part of our process, when we are facing a shortage, depending on the severity, if we don't see a real solution, we do provide alternates to our customers for their review and approval.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? And then I guess the other element of these component shortages, you're having to buy from less traditional sources, perhaps not just your normal sources. Does that mean you've got to do a little bit more work in terms of goods inward and counterfeit detection and taking care to make sure those components are actually fit for purpose?
Yes, it's really. I guess you have to strike a balance. I earlier mentioned that one of our action was to expand our spot buy supply base, but we only deal with reputable sources, as you correctly pointed out. That there's a lot of counterfeits out there, so we always have to keep that balance. Sometimes we do see inventory availability, but if it's not from if it's from a questionable source, we prefer to avoid it to protect our customers, really.
Yeah. So solutions to the current component shortages, a lot of people are, or particularly governments, are pushing for more semiconductor capacity that is local. And we're seeing TSMC building in Arizona and Global Foundries building in New York State, and different parts of Asia as well are adding capacity. That'll take some time. Do you see that happening at all in Central America, Ivan? Is there a likelihood that semiconductor capacity will ramp close to your supply chain?
Yeah, basically, I think that some of the strategies is to have the strategic components manufactured also in America. So some key components need to be moving back from Asia also to warranty the supply chain. In the last days, the Minister of Economy in Mexico was also talking that she's very close to have a negotiation with a semiconductor company to be in the Baja area. So it looks like it's going to be a huge investment that will happen very soon in Mexico.
Yeah, I think that'll make a big difference. And, we've talked a lot about the component issue, but that kind of connects to the supply chain security issue. And one of the things the US is very concerned about is having a secure supply chain, a reliable supply chain that's closer to it. Does that increase their dependence on Mexico and particularly on the border towns like Reynosa, where you are, Hugo? How do you see that developing?
Well, the border towns in general, we have quite a long history with security, and there are two main keys. Either you have it's recommended that you are either certified or compliant to CTPAT or OEA, which are the two benchmarks, and this is just good business to manage your inbound and outbound supply chains with the correct security. So a part of the standards that I mentioned, obviously you have to make sure that your internal processes and infrastructure are aligned, meaning employee selection and also your how your warehouses are structured and accessed. Additional to that, I have always personally found that this always makes sense to deal with long-standing and reputable providers, either in logistics or 3PLs. Typically, the reputable providers are already certified, so that gives you a certain level of, I guess, trust of what they are doing. And one of the biggest advantages, at least in my opinion, of the Mexican supply chain is that its cycle time is much shorter from, let's say, a northern town like Reynosa, where we are located, to the US, is typically hours, versus a supply chain that you are maybe managing out of Asia or China specifically. It has a longer cycle time, meaning longer in transit times, which by default require longer oversight of your cargo.
Yeah. So it kind of changes the model, does it? And the US's relationship with China seems to be changing, particularly through the pandemic, but even before there because of the trade war. Ivan, does that mean that US companies are becoming more reliant on Mexico? And are they kind of looking at this China plus one strategy where Mexico is a key player, or some of them shifting entirely to Mexico?
Yeah, Mexico has been the strategic manufacturing partner for the United States for many years, 25, 30 years. And yes, some years ago, the China plus one, it was the strategy to be in the Asian countries like Bangladesh, Philippines, or Malaysia, or others. And of course, right now, Mexico is playing a big role into that strategy. We see that is because last year it was a huge increase of the manufacturing capacity for electronics in all Mexico, and that's why 2021 is having another big growth into the installed capacity.
Yeah, and as part of that, it seems to be that Asian companies are investing more and more in Mexico as well. So you have this strange dynamic of people looking at shifting businesses, shifting capacity out of China, but those same companies having capacity there in China. How big a trend is that at the moment? That seems to be one of the major investment trends in Mexico at the moment.
Yeah, well, we can say that there are two big strategies to bring production into Mexico. One is from the traditional companies in Mexico moving products from Asia, but they're also relocating products from east of Europe. So there is a lot of manufacturing from Ukraine, Hungary, Romania, production from those countries coming into Mexico. That is a good trend. There is a lot of relocation and new manufacturing for medical devices also in Mexico. And of course, we see a huge investment, hundreds of millions of dollars of new investment in the electronic assembly industry from the big ODMs that have been setting up in Taiwan, with the largest manufacturing capacities in China and Vietnam. So they are setting up facilities here in Mexico. So within the next 6 months, we're going to have like 50 new SMT lines just for these big Asian players that are moving the production. And a lot of the computing assembly products that went to Asia more than 12, 15 years ago, right now, those big computer brands are back in Mexico doing PCB and final assembly. So that are great news. Thousands of people, new jobs in the electronics, that we are sure that it's going to be good jobs for all the Mexican people.
Yeah, and is that everywhere across Mexico, or is it in specific towns? Where are they favoring?
Well, the city where Hugo is located, Reynosa, has been one of the cities with largest growth in the last 3 years. This year is also a good year for Reynosa in general, but we see a lot of investment in Monterrey, Ciudad Juárez, Tijuana, and Guadalajara. So it's a balanced growth in the most important. The only city that we don't see a lot of investment in this year is Querétaro, but Querétaro is focused mainly in automotive So that's why the automotive is still a little bit slow.
It's a little bit of a lag.
During this year, yeah, because of the transition to electrical vehicles and because the material shortage.
Yeah, we'll come back to electric vehicles because I think that's really interesting. Hugo, it must feel like with Season Group, you were ahead of this trend, because when people look at a China plus one strategy, if they want to do China and Mexico, they can do both of those through Season Group. Have you seen projects kind of shift in terms of their mix even within the Season Group? So you're doing maybe some more in Mexico, and how is the Mexican facility growing at the moment?
Yes, we are growing, and there's a high interest on our Mexican capability. And I mean, as you know, the China plus one strategy has been around for a while with different names. The historical factors was if you have a product with high and stable demand, you move it to China if it's mature enough. If you need speed to market, you use Mexico. Those were historically those were the traditional factors behind the decisions. What we are seeing now is very high interest on mainly because companies are trying to reduce their duty burden. As you know, Mexico has a well-established and flexible, we call it IMEX program, which allows us to import materials with China being the country of origin and transform it to a made or assembled in Mexico product. So that is one of the main reasons or drivers that we are seeing now on this big push of moving production out of China and into our factory in Mexico. So we are seeing two sources or channels of growth. One being our established customers that are looking to either reduce their duty burden or bypass the bottlenecks in the different ports or their whole logistics complications that we've seen lately. So that's one channel. The other channel is just new customers that are coming on board, which have the capability such as Season, where we have the global footprint, so we can start in China, the prototyping and move mass production to Mexico seamlessly. We have our R&D services, so our global footprint and I guess our wide list of services that we provide has been attracting more new customers with emphasis in the Mexican capability.
Yeah, and I think that makes perfect sense, not just for you, but kind of across the board with Mexican supply, because there is that very broad and very, very deep capacity and capability at the moment. But you mentioned before challenges in terms of recruiting talent. Is that one of the issues with respect to being able to keep up with this growth? Is it getting more and more difficult to fill the factory with staff, or are there still enough people out there to hire and move into the electronic manufacturing industry?
The way that I see it is a short-term abnormality. The demand, the speed by which the demand for new labor increases is increasing faster than the inflow. Historically, Reynosa has had a pretty large floating population from out of city, out of state, that coming into our city to work. Now, between the explosion on labor demand and the actual inflow of labor, there's a gap, and that's what we are seeing, which, in my opinion, that anomaly will be corrected by the market just by simply the inflow of additional labor coming into the city. The short answer to your question is, yeah, it is more difficult today, but there's still people to staff our business, and it will be a short-term solution. Short-term problem.
Short-term problem. Yeah, Ivan, do you see that? And you mentioned before off camera that the rates are rising in Mexico. Do you worry that the shortfall of talent and the rising cost of talent is putting Mexico's growth at risk, or do you think there's a sustainable number of people? You know, I live down in Guadalajara, and there are like 100,000 people working in the electronic manufacturing space, and the universities seem to be doing a great job of getting graduates out there into the industry. How do you see that talent side of things right now?
There is a big demand for more people. However, we see that the industry is self-sufficient. Sometimes they need to have an additional route of the buses, because here most of the companies have transportation for the employees. So they need to open a new route, maybe 10, 15 miles away than the previous one, in order to collect the people. But so far, it's good enough. We don't see that any type of the industry, because we have, besides the electronics, we have the tequila industry, we have a lot of agronomy industry type. All types of industry have been able to find the right people. Always there is a nearest town that you can pull a few hundreds of more people, and that's the solution. From the engineering support, then the companies has a good plan to develop the skills, to speed up the skills of the people, bringing new guys from the school, from the university. So trying to keep the balance between the junior guys and the senior staff. So that's the way that the industry is being keeping up with the good quality levels.
Yeah, and coping with that demand. Hugo, do you have your own talent development strategy within your factory? Do you do a lot of in-house training, a lot of in-house staff development?
Yes, we have there's two dimensions to it. First one, we have our ongoing training for our floor staff, just making sure that our labor is well trained in the different operations to guarantee our quality. And the other one is the actual development. So not only to be trained on their current operation, but their future growth. So we do have a program in place, and our priority is normally to promote from within.
Yeah, and it makes sense to do that, doesn't it? What's really interesting, guys, is we've got 30 odd minutes into the show and we haven't talked about the pandemic. And for the last 12 months, that's been the first thing on on every discussion we've had, it feels like the component shortages have almost taken over as the biggest disruption. But just briefly, what's going on in terms of the kind of getting past the pandemic and the pandemic recovery, you know, kind of dealing with the impact on the economy and everything else? Hugo, from your factory point of view and from where you are on the border there, how have you seen things change, and are you seeing an improvement in terms of the disruption that the pandemic has caused?
Well, the growth is happening. As both of you well know, we had a slump when the whole pandemic started last year. But we are well into economic recovery. I feel that we will probably not be fully recovered this year. We will probably be 1 or 2% below prior to the pandemic. I feel, or at least what I read from the experts, is that full recovery is not expected until early 2022. Major concern is that we are seeing spikes or outbreaks lately, especially in the northern states, but it's also happening into some heavily populated states in central and south Mexico, as Ivan pointed out earlier. So the concern with that is that it could be a derailer of the current projections, really.
Yeah, so slowing things down. Ivan, how do you see it?
Well, the largest affectation of the industry is in the tourist and entertainment industries. For example, here in the Jalisco state, right now bars and nightclubs are shutting down for all the August month, so they cannot operate. So the government of the state is supporting those employees during this time. But the manufacturing industry has been considered like essential, and no shutdowns, not really problems during the pandemic. There is a good strategy in all Mexico now with the vaccine. Since 6-8 weeks ago, it was a good cooperation between the government of the United States and Mexico to get more vaccines in the border area. So basically, it was one of the areas where they opened the registration to get the vaccine for 18 and older, while in the other part of the country it was 40 and older. So that speed up the recovery of the border area getting the vaccine. And also, since weeks ago, the industry in Jalisco state set up a new or a mega center for vaccines here in the Flex campus. So basically, around of 80 different industries, age range according with the national vaccine plan, to get the vaccine inside the Flextronics campus. But you can see people from Samina, Jabil, and other type of industry. 80 different companies show up at the Flex campus to get the vaccine. So today we just got the news that the registration for 18 and plus in Jalisco is being open to do similar process into one of the customer sites. But in general, if you are registered now to get the vaccine into the government page, you show up to that place, and within 10-20 minutes you get the vaccine. So very, very fast. At the beginning of the year, it takes 4 to 12 hours to get the vaccine. Right now it's no more than 20 minutes. So we have made a lot of progress. Right now, it looks like the vaccine availability in Mexico is easy to get the vaccine if you want it. Just there is a schedule according with the age of the people. So that will speed up the economic recovery for all the country within few months.
Yeah.
Of course, we need to take care of the spikes because especially in the summer season, especially in the beach places like Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, is the ones where we see those spikes on the COVID positive trends. But this is because there's still some people that are not being vaccinated, and there's still some people that are not following the basic rules, like have the face mask in most of the day.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge, isn't it? To get people to follow rules, and that's the case north of the border as well as where you are. Hugo, what's the vaccination rate at the season group facility there, and is that the typical vaccination rate for Mexico?
Our internal vaccination rate is 50%, around 50%, and that number is increasing fast. It's increasing fast because, as Ivan mentioned, there's a big push on vaccination. Regionally, the main driver is the need to reopen the border on both sides. So really, there's a big push not only in Reynosa, but you also see it on the U.S. side. And the main factor is the key is to reopen the border because it is having a negative impact on both sides, really.
Yeah, and I think that will make all the difference to the recovery. Last question before we wrap up. In terms of technology, manufacturing technology, digital transformation, are you seeing a big trend there? We talked about skill shortages, and a lot of people use automation to do that. You mentioned earlier, Ivan, that the influx of Asian businesses is causing a growth in automation. What are the major trends like at the moment, and what are companies doing to make sure they're keeping up with the digitization of their manufacturing process?
You know, this automation process or ramp up began like 4 to 5 years ago. We can say that right now there is only 15% of the total possible operations to automate that is been already automated in Mexico. So still 85% of the
lots of opportunity
field to work with. Yes, this automation is based right now in several fields. One is to increase the quality, other to speed up or to increase the capacity of the line, and also to keep the social distancing between the operators. Because with this COVID, and we need to have more distance between the people, then the automation helps to achieve that one. And of course, that helps to have the people doing value-add activities instead just to moving material. The people is no longer being used for move the material, is just to do value-add operations. So that is one of the good things. And this trend with the big ODMs coming from Asia, these guys are the ones that have more automation in Asia also. So they are moving hundreds of new robots into the production lines in Mexico. So that's why all the current established companies in the country needs to speed up the digitalization of the process in order to be in the same with the same capabilities that the new guys are coming, because the customer will compare apples with apples. So automation is going to be a big player for the decision makers.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's interesting what you say there, and like you say, automation can bring so many benefits, whether it's reducing the human touch and reducing the risk of quality defects, or perhaps increasing efficiency, or picking up some of the shortfall due to talent shortages. Hugo, within Season Group, and particularly in Mexico, what's the strategy there? Are you seeing more digital transformation, more automation coming through? Is that a key part of the development of your facility?
Well, first, Season Group has the deep knowledge of automation. We do have our own automation team out of Asia that supports us. But again, with automation also comes investment. So regionally, meaning outside in Mexico, we try to strike a balance. Being in a low-cost country, we try to balance investment between actual investment and labor costs. So there are some projects that we see that require automation because of volume or quality requirements, etc. But there are some other projects that don't justify full automation. So we tailor it to the project, always trying to keep a balance between investment and labor costs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the key, isn't it? It's to pick the right processes to automate where you're going to drive the most benefit to the customer. Last question before we wrap up. Ivan, you mentioned earlier that you're seeing a transition from the traditional to the electric vehicle industry. Is that producing a big dividend for contract manufacturers in Mexico?
Well, automotive is not a big business for the contract manufacturing because the margins are very tight. But there is a lot of new planning for the big EVs manufacturers. So looks like most of them are running qualifications right now and expecting to have big production volumes in the next year.
Okay, so a big one for the future. Well, it seems like Mexico just powers on and powers on through every crisis and comes out the other side stronger each time. So the saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," is absolutely the case, and it looks like a good solid growth year, particularly next year when you get into 2022. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat to me, guys. I've really enjoyed it today. Look forward to chatting again in the future, but in the meantime, stay safe, and let's talk again soon. Thanks for now.
Thank you for having us.